Are you able to see it?
Yes, Baba, we can see
Okay,
the presentation.
Thank you. Let me start with a prayer. Sadashiva Samarambam Shama Charana Madhyamam Asmad Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. I bow down to Supreme Almighty God. I bow down to this beautiful lineage of Kriya masters, in particular to Shri Lahiri Baba on this auspicious day. I bow down to my beloved Gurudev, Paramahamsa Hariharananji, my beloved Guruji, Paramahamsa Prajnanji. I bow down to the saints and sages of all times, of all places, of all religions. And I bow down to the God within you all. Good morning, everyone. It's good morning for me. I think it's good evening for you. It's about 6:21 a.m. for me here. So it is very nice to join early in the morning with you all. Very happy to do so. I wanted to share this picture. This is the only picture, as you know, of Lahiri Baba. This was taken, this photo was taken by a photographer from Kashi. It's Gangadhar Day. You probably have heard this story, but Gangadhar Day tried to take Lahiri Baba's picture many times, and every time he tried to develop the picture, it was just a blank, nothing. So he thought there was something wrong that he did, initially. So he tried to take that picture, repeatedly asked Lahiri Baba to sit, in the sun, and took the picture a few times. And then at one time, he realized it's not possible to take this picture without the blessings of the Guru, the great Guru. So as a result, he basically begged him, can you please give us one picture, so that I can share it with the world. Lahiri Baba did not want to, give many, pictures or poses, simply because he did not want people to worship his picture rather than worshiping, the worshiping God or worshiping the Supreme Almighty Brahman within us. So that's the reason that he would not give. And anyway, he blessed this particular picture. Of course, it was probably black and white picture, and it has been modified to a color picture here. Before I begin the teachings of Lahiri Baba, I want to briefly, I know that you had a lecture before by Swami Samarthananji, so I won't go into a lot of details into the life of Shri Lahiri Mahasaya, but I do want to touch base on some of the aspects that of his life. He was born on September 30th, 1828 in the Gurni village in West Bengal on the 7th day of Navaratri. If you participated in the 2011 pilgrimage that was organized by Prajnana Mission, which was beautiful, one of the best times I've had, best pilgrimages I have ever done, with 230 people participating. we did visit, this particular place to just show where that was. And anyways, and then what happened was there was a huge floods in that particular village, which wiped out pretty much a lot of the population and the properties, and so people had to move out. Father, his Lahiri Baba's father was Pandit Gaur Mohan Lahiri Sarkar, who was very devoted to Lord Shiva and Mother Kali. Mother is Muktakeshi, was very devoted to Lord Shiva. And in fact, the mother was a second wife of Lahiri Baba's father. He had 2 sons and a daughter from his first wife. Lahiri Baba started meditating from a very young age on his own. In fact, his mother would take him to the Shiva temple and would meditate there while he was playing. And one day when she came out of her meditation, she found Lahiri Baba sitting. Now this is a child of probably 3 years old, sitting there with ashes all over his body and sitting and meditating. Another time, when Mother Muktakeshi was meditating, she was awakened by a soft voice calling her mother, mother, and in the Shiva temple. And when she opened her eyes, she found this saint in front of her. She got a little startled, but he assured that there's no need for anything to be afraid of. But he said, this child has been ordained by me, pointing to Lahiri Baba, to liberate the saints and householders by using the easiest and simplest techniques of self-realization. In the future, this child, while still remaining in the mundane world, will be an ideal and highly honored soul and will pave the way for others to reach God realization. Like a shadow, I'll be ever watchful of him, and through him, my grand dream will be brought to fulfillment. Obviously, this was a statement by Mahavatar Babaji himself, for talking about Lahiri Baba. Now, like I mentioned, the great floods in Bengal, and Muktakeshi left her body during that time in 1832. So the family moved to Kashi, Varanasi in 1833. So basically, at that point, the father of Lahiri Baba put him into various schools. Shamacharanji studied Sanskrit, Samskrita, Hindi, Urdu, Parsi, English, and French. Now, he also studied Indian philosophy, Vedas, Upanishads, ancient scriptures, and modern Western philosophy. Now, the father kept, observing that the son was an introvert, very interested in meditation and so on. So he was a little worried about him possibly getting to be a monk or something like that. So he got him married at an early age of 18 years old to Srimati Kashimani Devi, who was only 10 years old at that time. Now, Lahiri Baba was very much advanced for his age. Girls were not going to school at those days, and Lahiri Baba believed in education for all, for women as well. So, in fact, he started a school for a girls' school, but it didn't succeed too well. He had to close it. But he taught his wife how to read and write, so that she could read scriptures and enjoy those scriptures later on. As you all know, Lahiri Baba came across the great Mahavatar Babaji in November 1861. And we visited this beautiful place in Ranikhet. We saw during the pilgrimage time in 2011, we even meditated in the cave where he was initiated. It was one of the best experiences to meditate in that place, and in another place where Mahatar Babaji had materialized a palace for him. Anyways, with the Guru's guidance, Lahiri Baba experienced 7 days of Nirvikalpa Samadhi after initiation, which was unbroken, So he experienced that, and of course he wanted to stay in that with him in the Himalayas. Of course, Mahatar Babaji had other plans for him. He wanted him to go back to Kashi, where he was transferred from, and propagate Kriya Yoga, to teach Kriya Yoga to deserving people. So later, as he came back, he had 5 children, 2 sons, Tinkori and Dikori, and 3 daughters, Harimati, Harikamini, and Harimohini. Now, if you look at his life, while he was benevolent and helping others, he was himself working extremely hard to meet ends, to basically meet his ends, to be self-sufficient in terms of financial aspects of his life. He worked as an accountant during the day, and then he tutored in spare time, and he taught and initiated his disciples in the evening and meditated at night. Of course, he even exercised every day. He didn't give up his physical exercise. He had a very strong physique, strong body, which was very, very essential. As you know, Bhagavad Gita says, Shariram Kalu Dharma Sadhanam. You do need a good body in order to able to practice your meditation, practice your duties. And he also swam in Ganga even during floods. Now, if you look at his life, though, again, we can derive some very interesting aspects of his life. So his teaching was, one of the first teachings I want to share is that he wanted to, he said in 24 hours, he said, you should spend 8 hours in God, 8 hours for work, and the other 8 hours for sleep and family and other activities. I know that is not easy to do, in the current day, but at least going back to what Guruji had, mentions. Guruji mentions that one should sleep 5 hours, 6 hours, maximum 7 hours, not more than that. So if you take that, then essentially we're talking about, even if you take 7 hours a day as for sleep, then obviously you don't have enough time for the rest of the things in the 8 hours that Lahiri Baba mentioned. So at least if you can devote 4 hours per day for our meditation, chanting, whatever worships that you do. So 4 hours for God, and so the remaining 4 hours you can use it for, the other activities that you have to complete. So let's try to take this as a guidance from Lahiri Baba. If you can do the 8 hours per day of, meditation, worship, and chanting, etc., that's great. But if you're not able to, at least let us try to spend 4 hours per day with God. Going back to his life, he taught everyone without discrimination. He had Muslim followers, he had Christian followers, he had followers from all religions. He also had, he didn't discriminate between men and women. he gave initiations to both. And also, even though he had very meager means, he still gave to charity. He would support people for various activities that they wanted to perform, such as, for example, thread ceremony for children, for their sons and so on. He did not write any books, but he wrote his teachings in a number of diaries, and that has been in Bengali, which is his language, and it has been translated, of course, to English at modern times. He was very humble, and that's a key aspect. He was very humble always and maintained the state of Sthitaprajna. There was a time when his second daughter died because of some illness. And even during that time, he was teaching his disciples. He was doing the Bhagavad Gita class to his disciples while people were crying in the other room. And of course, he still, when people said, how can you continue the class at this time? He said, we cannot be reading Bhagavad Gita and not apply what it's teaching. We need to apply that. So let's continue with it. Of course, the disciples could not continue anymore at that point. He left his body on this September 26, 1895, which was a Durga Ashtami day. Obviously, it has been 125 years since his passing, very significant date for this wonderful celebrations we are having. So let's go into some of the teachings of Lahiri Baba. First of all, I classified these into three parts, the teachings into three parts. One is the teachings for new initiates. And then, of course, in between these teachings, I will relate some stories so that it is not too dry a presentation for you. So I'll relate some stories of Lahiri Baba. And then, so the three parts are teachings of Lahiri Baba for new initiates, teachings of Lahiri Baba for us in our daily life. Lahiri Baba is a great example of a householder yogi, as you know. We have, of course, two other householder yogis in our lineage. We have, Swami Sri Tishwar, who initially was married and then later became a monk, and also Bhupendranath Sanyal Mahasaya, who was a householder till the end. So the teachings for the new initiates is that, number one, you will not reveal the technique to anyone, which we follow also. Then second one is that consider women as the manifestation of the Divine Mother. Of course, that is mainly because most of the people were men, but it also means for the women, consider men as the manifestation of the Divine Father. The third one, as long as you are in the body, go on practicing Kriya. This is very, very crucial. When you are ill, practice manasa Kriya, mental Kriya with inner awareness. Anyone can practice even while they are sick. They can practice a mental bhav. They can also practice, the Kriya Pranayama, things of that nature. So the things can be done even while lying down. One of the statements that he would say is that one is unfortunate if they don't get initiated into Kriya. But one is most unfortunate if one gets initiated into Kriya and does not practice it. And there is a nice example of this situation in in the life of Lahiri Baba. So there was this priest who wanted to get initiated, and he would come to Lahiri Baba for asking for initiation, and Lahiri Baba would tell him, no, let's try next year, just keep practicing your worship, etc. So he would encourage the person to go back and keep practicing the chantings and other things that he was doing. And then there was this woman who came to Lahiri Baba and requested initiation. And Lahiri Baba said, yeah, come tomorrow, I'll initiate you. So the disciples were a little confused about that. They said, how come this priest, you're sending him back, repeatedly every year, while you're asked this woman to get initiated right away? Lahiri Baba smiled and explained, this woman was already initiated before in her previous birth, but did not practice. So I'm giving her a second chance to, essentially practice Kriya now. So just a side story with respect to that. So it is a crucial aspect that one should be practicing Kriya every day. And that's the teachings of Lahiri Baba. Fourth teaching is try to be free from inner enemies such as passion, anger, etc. This is something that we'll be talking about in other teachings later on. Seek good company. Read the Bhagavad Gita daily. Be humble always. Guruji and Gurudev have always advised this, to read Gita just one verse each day, not much, but read a single verse and the commentaries that is given by Yogananji or Guruji or Gurudev, so that you can read that, essentially imbibe those teachings in your practice. And so contemplating on that and then trying to practice accordingly. So this is something that we need to do on a daily basis. This also corresponds to our three aspects. As you know, Kriya Yoga is tapaha, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhana. Tapaha meaning your penance or your discipline, mental, physical discipline, and the practice itself. Swadhyaya representing your study of the scriptures. In this case, Bhagavad Gita. It could be whatever scriptures that you like, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Upanishads, the Vedas, whichever it is that you like to read. But reading a little, but more importantly, applying that teaching to your daily life, and also doing the self-analysis of ourselves as to what our positive aspects are, what are our things that need to improve on. So that gives you that self-analysis, and most importantly, the third aspect, Ishvara Pranidhana, where you basically surrender to God, surrender your actions, and surrender everything that you do to God, and remember God in each breath. So let's try to do that as we are, practicing and being in this retreat. Let's try to watch each breath as far as possible. Try to keep your tongue rolled back as well, and practice it continuously. Whenever you're not the tongue rolled back in Khichdi Mudra, practice it whenever you're not, drinking or eating or talking, etc. The other aspect he stressed is to be humble always. Humility is a extremely important aspect of his teachings and is a great aspect, extremely important aspect for spiritual progress. Finally, he also mentioned, he would mention that liberation is really the ultimate goal that one needs to practice to achieve. Going into the daily life, for the practice of yoga, there are three things that are necessary that he mentions. One, a healthy and strong body. Obviously, that means we should take care of our body, especially now in these times of COVID, where one's immunity can be challenged, because of the virus. We really have to be careful and practice, daily exercises to keep this healthy and strong body. But even otherwise, it is very important for our practice to keep a healthy and strong body. Second aspect is that undeviated determination. And thirdly, goodwill. So the willpower is a key aspect. He says, whoever has these treasures can practice yoga without impediments. If you refer to Vivekachudamani, Adi Shankaracharya mentions Durlabham Trayametat Devanugraha Hetukam Manushatvam Mumukshatvam Mahapurusha Samshaya. So he mentions three aspects that are given to us as blessings of God. One is Manushatvam, a human body. Secondly, Mumukshatvam, and this is necessary for our liberation, our progress, which is a very strong determination and liking for liberation. And thirdly, Mahapurusha Samshaya, the association of a great master. We already have the first and the third. We have the human life, we have the association of a great master, our lineage, and of course, in person, Paramahamsa Pragyanji, our Guruji. But what we need is a very strong desire for God realization. Gurudev used to say many times, it only depends on your desire. That's all the main thing is. So this undeviated determination and goodwill are essential aspects for that progress. If one's will be set on God realization, one can attain it even while living a worldly life. And you can see that in the life of our masters. If you look at Gurudev, he came, into the Karara ashram and practiced in Karara ashram, completely dedicated his life there and practiced from 1931 to 1947. So within 16 years of intense practice that he could attain that highest state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. If you look at our Guruji, he was initiated around 1980, and Gurudev gave him the title of Paramahamsa in 1998. So 18 years of practice, he had the God realization within that time. So these are some examples you can see from our own masters that they were able to achieve that by their sincere practice. Third one, by devotion and love to the Guru, everything becomes possible. This is indeed rare. Guruji is a great example of this. His love to Gurudev is unmatchable. He is always referring to Gurudev for everything that Even today, when he does initiations, you might have noticed that he doesn't take his name. He only takes Gurudev's name as a guru to initiate. That is the greatness of our Guruji. And his devotion and love to the Guru is amazing. So it's something that we need to learn from him and cultivate at least some of it. Fourth one, it is not true that you do not have time for God realization. Everyone knows this part. Don't we have at least half an hour of time to practice our meditation? Everybody does. Fifth, control the mind rather than being a slave to the mind. Kriya Yoga helps to keep the mind under control. Obviously, we know that this is a very difficult thing to do. And even, Arjuna asks Krishna, during his discourse of Bhagavad Gita, O Lord Krishna, that mind is like, to control the mind is like trying to catch air. How can one do that? And Krishna explains, of course, it's very hard to do so, but one can do that by two things, abhyasa and vairagya. Even if you look at, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, that mention is made by sage Patanjali, that there are two things that you need, abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa is a practice, the regular practice which leads to that control of the mind slowly. Obviously, you cannot expect that to happen overnight or in a very short period of time. It takes years of practice to do so. And as a result of that, abhyasa, slowly dispassion starts to settle in. You start to have the dispassion in all the five centers that we have, so that we get more into vairagya. Of course, the ultimate vairagya happens when one gets realized, but until then, one needs to keep practicing it. If the mind is not controlled and kept still in Brahman, knowledge of the self is impossible to attain. Of course, this is a key aspect that sage Patanjali mentions. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. The cessation of all the modifications of the mind, complete cessation, complete stillness is required in order to achieve yoga. He has already mentioned in the very second aphorism of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. If the mind is on kutastha, it is not sin. If the mind is not on kutastha, it is sin. What this is talking about is, you all have heard the teachings of Guruji and Gurudev to keep a little attention on the fontanelle all the time. To keep that little attention and observing the breath while performing all our actions. So kutastha, of course, means the soul center, but whether kutastha or on the fontanelle, either way, if one can keep their attention on that, then you are able to essentially offer all the actions that you do to God. Next one, until you humble yourself, you cannot enter the spiritual realm. So humility and ego are opposites. So when one reduces the ego, humility grows. And humility is completely essential. And if you look at the life of Gurudev or Guruji, you can see that, how humble they are. And if you look at Guruji, he invites various monks. He himself is a realized master, but he bows down to, he washes their feet and bows down to the monks that come to the ashram. You can see the humility right there. And, Gurudev, whenever he used to see us, he would greet us with the most loving and most humble face, if you will. It was a very precious moments to be with him and to see him in person. It was an amazing experience. Attachment is an obstacle. If there is no attachment, then there is no obstacle. Always remember, everything belongs to God and nothing belongs to you. Again, this refers to the vairagya, the dispassion that we need to develop as we practice. Final teaching here on this page: do not be perturbed by small happenings. Things come and things happen within our lives, during our lives. There's some difficulties that come. There could be ill health. There could be um, whatever difficulties, financial difficulties or other difficulties that can happen. But basically, remember that the Guru is within us and the Guru is taking care of us. So here Lahiri Baba is mentioning Sri Master, referring to Mahatar Babaji, keeps a watch on those who rest in him. So if you surrender to the Guru, always remembering the Guru, then Guru is already, in fact, the moment you got initiated into Kriya Yoga, it is now Guru's responsibility to take you to liberation. But of course, you have to do your part. That's required. But it is also their responsibility, whether it is in this life or other lives, to take you to that liberation. Going into the next page, do not hinder the way of others' God realization. This is an interesting teaching of Lahiri Baba. Yeah, this is and a great example of this is in the life of Bhagavati Charan Ghosh, the father of Paramahamsa Yoganandaji. So he mentioned he would, Bhagavati Charan Ghosh had Avinash Babu, who was basically working for him, and he basically, at one time, Avinash Babu he was already a disciple of Lahiri Baba, and he wanted to go for a week to see Lahiri Baba. And, Bhagavati Charan Ghosh said, why don't you concentrate on work? Why are you trying to go somewhere and escape from the work, etc.? And so, that evening they were walking, and when they came to a fields, and I'm trying to keep it brief. So when they came to this field, they saw the huge image of Lahiri Baba, and he basically was telling Bhagavati Charan Ghosh, why are you coming the way of his God realization? So that was the time when Bhagavati Charan Ghosh realized that he is looking at a great master, and he went to, in fact, he himself applied for a vacation and went with him to meet the Guru and get initiated. He and his wife both got initiated. The simmering flames of worldly life can be extinguished if someone maintains his internal detachment while he goes about his everyday duties. Again, talking about the dispassion that grows as we keep practicing Kriya. By surrendering everything to God, he who continues the path reaps immediate dividends. Again, let us not think of the dividends, let's not think about, oh, I need to get this particular, benefit, etc. The more you think about benefits and practice with that in mind, the less it's going to happen. So, practice without any expectations, and that's when things will actually happen. The world is a testing ground. There are many exams are to be taken. In all aspects of life, one must be efficient and expert so that no sense of wants remains. This is something that you have to remember. You will be put to test in your resolve, in in your steadfastness many times in your life. And you have to make sure that you're able to pass those tests and keep that mental strength and not weaken it. So long as man has not subdued his animal nature, he'll not be able to discover the divinity within him. This is a key aspect that we need to control our negativities. Shun all thoughts about the past and future. Do all your work with your attention fixed on your breath, meaning be in the present at this point. Those who remain merged in Brahman worship Brahman, whether they are aware of it or not. They constantly realize the atom point within the Kutastha. So it is key aspect is to keep our attention on Brahman. When you say merged in Brahman or worship Brahman, be in Brahman, a simple aspect in Kriya is to watch the breath. And if you are able to watch the breath and hear the divine sound, hearing the divine sound comes from Brahman. And when we do that, then we are in Brahman. There is no work without desire. Work which is duty bound is also born of some desire. So, but there is always desire to start with. But the thing is, the expectations, what you get, for your work as a result of your work is up to God. And that's what that's what Lord Krishna is teaching in Bhagavad Gita. In every breath, merge with the soul. Practice makes perfect. Going on to the next. Practice Kriya in the morning. By practicing Kriya in the morning, the vices of the night will evaporate. And by practicing Kriya in the evening, the sins of the day will be obliterated. So Guruji also mentions that you need to practice twice a day, at the minimum, in fact, he says. So practicing at least the full Kriya and at least a short form of Kriya at the other time is at least needed so that we have that continuity every day. Without work, nothing can be achieved and God cannot be realized. Try hard, then you'll get everything. Forget your past suffering and troubles. If you set your mind on self-realization and work towards your spiritual upliftment, you'll receive immense benefits. So don't dwell on continuously on the things that didn't happen or whatever, past sufferings and troubles. Past is past, is gone. Let's go forward and set our mind on what we should do next. Keep doing everything with an eye on God and Guru. Inherent in that is your good. Since Atma, your soul, is your real Guru. God lives in you. Instead of seeking him in the distance, seek him who is near and very much within you. Never eat too much. Take only what is easily digestible. This is Gurudev always used to mention that before eating, your stomach, you should fill up half the stomach with water and then eat 1/4 of the stomach and leave 1/4 empty. So, and also he would say, chew 100 times, each time. Of course, we never succeeded. It would not be able to chew that many times, but he would say, chew 100 times before before swallowing. Before knowing God, know your own self. Look inside yourself. Self-realization is God realization. This is referring to Swadhyaya, where you focus on, understanding your own being, your own positives and negatives. The Guru is always conducting everything. He's always present in the Kutastha. Remember, Guru is within you. Even if you are not able to go out in these COVID times when you're locked up in your home, or pretty much so at this point, please, remember, Guru is within you in the soul. Soul itself is a Guru, and the Guru is what you want to be. If you focus on the Kutastha and in the fontanelle, practice it, you're already with the Guru. Guru is all pervading. and permanently gracious. You are your own guru within yourself. Now, in terms of the meditation practice itself, he was mentioning the few things that I mentioned here. Behold the light in yourself with a concentrated mind. This you're able to perceive that light. It could be smoky, foggy light or whatever perception that you see, but there is still that little bit of light to start with, which then improves tremendously as you keep practicing it. Meditation means to still the mind. Sadhana does not progress without controlling the mind. This is something we already talked about. The second verse of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. The mind is restless because of prana. The air is always fluctuating. It's the breath because of the inhalation, exhalation that we are taking. There is always that fluctuation. So the mind is becoming, unsteady because of that. So, but when you regulate that more inhalation, exhalation, and introvert that breath, meaning essentially it is that breath is almost not even coming. Gurudev used to say, feeble breath. If you get into that feeble breath, mind becomes so introverted and still, and then you can go into meditation. The mind emanates from the soul. Good or bad are states of the mind. From the heart, you must realize that Sa is Hum, meaning the soul and I are one. Remember, when he's talking about the heart, he's talking about the spiritual heart. The physical heart is to the left, on the left side. The emotional heart is in the middle of the chest. The spiritual heart is in the brain. So when he's talking about the heart, basically concentrating with it in the soul center or in the fontanelle. If you dive deep down into your heart, you will see him, not outside. Practice Kriya with love and joy, seeking refuge in the Master and having no fear. This is extremely important. We should not be practicing mechanically, practicing Kriya with love and joy. And that's when, the true effect of the Kriya will happen. By removing restlessness through sadhana, one will attain the stage of calmness. How do you do that? By basically repeating the practice of Kriya Pranayama. In Kriya, to remain in the superconscious state of extreme tranquility or paravastha means liberation. So as long as you can stay in that state, you are in that liberated state. Remaining ever in Brahman, above the head, with full self-control, one should stay still in samadhi. So he's giving a little bit of hint as to how to practice the paravastha. While perceiving Brahman, try to always have the conviction that I am Brahman. So when you practice that paravastha, remembering that you are nothing but that Brahman, you're one with that Brahman, essentially helps you to unite with that Brahman. Going to the next page. One whose words and mind remain secretly in Brahman can obtain everything, all the time. Keeping our attention on that breath is the way to be secretly in Brahman. Satiate your thirst for self-realization through offering your inhalation. Many samskaras, many births will disappear. We all know that the Kriya Pranayama, the first Kriya itself, gives the cycle of first Kriya itself eliminates 1 year of our karmas. And that's the way to burn the samskaras. Of course, if you have higher kriyas, you get even some more benefits from those. Everything is possible in first kriya. Even ecstatic joy can be achieved. However, if one is to achieve these things, perseverance and assiduity are essential. There is the story of Brinda Bhagat, who was a postman and a disciple of Lahiri Baba. And someone was asking for second kriya, and Lahiri Baba asked this postman, Brinda, do you want second kriya? And the Brinda said, no, master. I cannot even handle the first Kriya. It takes me to such ecstasy that I can't even deliver my letters. So please, I don't need the second Kriya. So the way beautifully uh, that Lahiri Baba has arranged, every each kriya is completely, the first kriya itself is sufficient for our realization. So don't worry about getting higher kriyas, etc. Practice even the first kriya very sincerely, and you will get great benefits. If kriya is practiced sincerely, all your negative instincts and emotions will be subdued. Instead, you will enjoy divine uplifting and euphoric sensations and loving impulses which will gush out from within. This should be your experience if you have practiced daily and sincerely. Weakness is sin, weakness is death. Rid yourself of all kinds of weakness. Do not wait for Guru Kripa, the grace of the Master. If you practice his instructions, his grace is automatically invoked. Gurudev used to say, Kripa has two syllables, Kriya and Pa. Kriya means, performing your actions, and Pa is to get. He would say, you do your work, Kriya, and you will get it, Pa. So that's what he used to say for people who asked for his blessings. In the internal sadhana, there is no need for external elements and rituals. Only mind and prana are essential. Of course, Lahiri Baba said his worship is not for any particular deity. In fact, somebody asked, which deity do you worship for? He said, I worshipped that Brahman within those deities. If one continues to practice, one continues practicing, communion with the soul is bound to happen, whether one is ready or not. In the last page here, while on a pilgrimage to a long and distant place, one comes across many beautiful scenes and shrines. If one remains in any specific place out of attachments to any of these scenes, one will fail to reach and behold the final destination. Obviously, you have a goal in mind, don't stop in between and get attracted to whatever in between. In fact, he mentions next, similarly, while practicing Kriya for self-realization, many gods and deities will automatically appear before you. Do not stop there, because that's not the final goal. You have to keep going ahead. If you move ahead without interrupting your voyage, these gods and deities will guarantee that you reach your destination by extending their own helping hand. Of course, they will put you to test, but once you are able to be steadfast in your meditation and in your practice, as well as in a controlled mind, the destination is surely possible. Guruji always says it's a double-edged sword. It's not easy. You really has to be careful walking in the middle, because you fall either way, you can get hurt. So be extremely careful as you keep practicing more and more, progressing more and more. The tests become harder. So you need to be careful and continue your practice till that very end. And then, of course, after that, gurus will guide you further. Remain fixed in nothingness, so don't try to imagine things. Gurudev used to always say, meditation is not imagination, it's not hallucination. It is none of those. It is basically fixing the mind, as Guruji says, watch the inner sky, in that nothingness is what you have to focus. If the mind is always entranced and engrossed in the self, God will be found. That progress is assured to you, especially when you watch the breath continuously. You are able to, that itself, watching the breath, action of watching the breath continuously itself gives you tremendous progress in meditation. And when you sit for meditation, it gives you a tremendous amount of concentration to go deeper very quickly. Always be in paravastha while performing Kriya, meaning you need to be always in that state of perfection, in the fontanelle or even beyond, as you practice all the various things, whether it be Mahamudra also. Keep that attention deeply in the fontanelle as you practice it. Keep on doing Kriya. In the process of making, ultimately you'll be made. Good, Lahiri Baba's famous statement, Banat, Banat, Banjai. So you will become, as you practice, you are basically, you're hitting, and finally the thing is, the stone is broken. Like Guruji used to mention to me, like I used to ask him, how much practice is needed to that. He said, you never know. You got to keep on hitting. And one day the stone is going to break. In other words, the path is going to open up so that you can get to that realization. So with this, let us practice our meditation for 15 minutes with the deepest love, focusing on Lahiri Baba. Please sit straight